Redditors who gave up pursuing their dream to settle for a more secure or comfortable life. How did it turn out, and do you regret your decision? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Attention, serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. In any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit, message composed or askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. Story 2. I wish I'd realized sooner that work is just work for me. There is no dream job. I just want something I'm good at with decent pay and no stress. Think I found it. Answer. Same. I think some adults really need to stop pressuring children to find their ultimate passion and translate it into their future career. That line of thinking led to a lot of anguish in college and some adult depression. We still kind of feel like I'm adrift in the ocean. We need more talk about how work is sometimes just work, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure. Story 3. My dream was to become a translator for Nintendo, specifically the Zelda franchise. Studied Japanese and lived there for a year, then became a video game translator at a small studio. Afterwards, a localization project manager at a bigger Korean company. Worked my way up to maybe one day be hired by Nintendo. Lost more and more passion for games on the way. Heard awful stories about working at Nintendo and slowly realized that this isn't the right job for me after all. Translators are, most of the time, underpaid, and the whole thing isn't as romantic as it seems. Decided to do something entirely else. Left the gaming and localization industry and am now a really happy and well-paid product manager for an e-commerce company. I will never go back. Knowing Japanese, well, the bit that is left after not using it for years is a good party trick still, so no regrets. Was a fun time, but it had to end. Story 4. I went to school for and worked as a video game developer. I saw the crunch times, the frequent layoffs, and general instability of the industry, and decided it wasn't for me after all. Been doing work in various industries trying to find something I want to do for a living. Came to the conclusion that I will never like working. So I am settled in at an aerospace manufacturing plant that has been in operation since WWP, and I can and probably will spend the rest of my working days here. I've decided that it's better for me to get my life's fulfillment from my hobbies and relationships instead of my work. Answer. I started programming at 14 as I wanted to make games. Made a load of them in my spare time. Went to uni to do computer games tech. Switched course in my first week to computer science as I came to the realization that in the games industry, I would get paid less to experience more stress and work more hours, all while still creating someone else's vision. I'm 30 now and I'm a dev team lead doing business software, working 95 remotely in a 37.5-hour work week. And in 8 years, I have done no more than about 20 hours of overtime in total. I try and make games in my spare time, but even with the amazing free tools these days, e.g. Unity, Versus, Blender, GIMP, I rarely have the energy to do more dev after doing it as a job. I don't regret changing direction, but if I could make games with the same work-life balance, pay, and benefits as working in software dev, I would. Story 5. When I was in college, I wasn't the most enthusiastic student. I barely hung onto my grades and spent most of my time partying. I mostly hung out with a buddy of mine who played drums for a thrash punk band that was on the cusp of being something. He taught me how to play, and I was surprisingly good at the drums. One day, my buddy broke his arm, and the band asked me to sub in for him. I played like 5 shows with them and had a hell of a time doing it. While he was recovering, my buddy wound up moving out of state, and the band asked if I wanted to replace him permanently. I think about that moment a lot, but wound up changing my major and getting through college. I now work in IT for a large company and think it worked out for the best. In hindsight, the music was pretty much unlistenable, and the band went nowhere. But there are definitely days when I'm overwhelmed at work, and I wonder what could have been. Maybe it's just age at this point, but I don't think I could have kept up with it for long. Answer, in hindsight, the music was pretty much unlistenable. You're the first guy in this thread to say this in a good while. Many artists will often remark the quality of the work because they are very much aware where they fall short, and often they are aware there are too many artists. This thread, I think there was only one guy that would refer on how he was the best of the best without proof. But musicians is another matter entirely. It is pretty hard for me to find someone that says they sucked or had nothing special. Why is that? Story 6. A little bit. I bounced around the lower levels of the film industry, earning nothing, earning $5 a day, earning $8.20 an hour. I really enjoyed most jobs, got some great stories, but after 10 years of missed opportunities, missing out on jobs to those more connected, of not having enough to do, I could blame the early days of digital, but I just didn't go hard enough. It was time. My 30s were approaching. I had less than 5 figures in the bank, despite still living at home and having next to no expenses. My romantic life consisted of admiring the actresses from afar and being a jerk to anyone who got close. I switched to teaching, and I mostly enjoy the work. I still tap into my skills occasionally. I make movies with my classes. Last year, made a whole bunch during remote teaching. I actually had the self-esteem and cash to start dating and am now engaged to a girl I don't deserve and have been trying to marry for months. I don't regret it, but I do miss it. Answer: similar situation here. Got a degree in film, however, after attempting to get in the industry for paid work, it just wasn't happening. Working for nothing is sustainable for a very short period once life starts moving, and it just wasn't feasible. I'll still apply for the odd film job here, but my credits experience is getting a bit dated now, just without regular opportunities, so also make connections, so think I'm ready to move on. Story 7. Turned out great, just not right at the moment, as I am still job hunting after having to quit my previous job. Still no regrets, though. I went to college to become a 3D animator, something I always dreamed about. I was top of the class, constantly won awards for my work. I honestly thought I was going to make it big. Then the final semester started and all the seniors were required to go to a special hiring event where tons of big names would be. I got my portfolio and resume copies ready to go and spent hours researching the big names and their projects, as well as rehearsing lots of practice questions. It was devastating. No one would look twice at my stuff. Introduced myself, made some awkward small talk, as they were so disinterested. Then as I walked away, they would immediately put it in the stack with hundreds of other portfolios and not in the special pile. I switched up my game. I started introducing myself with a quick mention that I had a background in programming. I did, thinking that maybe that would give me an edge. Oh boy, did it work. Suddenly I was getting personal business cards, phone numbers, and emails. My resume was put on the special pile. It was at that moment I realized I went into the wrong field. I was just a tiny, insignificant drop in a sea of artists, many of whom were much more talented than I could ever be. Finished up my degree and went back to college for a BS in computer science. Got my first job right out of college from an internship I did over the summer. The job itself was heaven, and I really enjoyed it. It also helped that I made bank when I was there. Paid off all my school loans within 3 years and had plenty to invest and put into savings. While it sucks not having anything right now, I'm hoping to find something soon. Side note, the 3D stuff I still do as a hobby. Not nearly as good as I once was, but it is still fun and relaxing. Answer: is there any reason you didn't go the technical artist route? I work in the game industry and often review visa applications, and I can tell you that technical artists that work on the creation of 3D animation systems make more money than nearly anyone. Of course, technical artists in general are highly in demand, even those who just can create shaders and SFX. Story 8. I feel like I made a temporary COVID decision. I started working in landscaping and went back to college. It's not exactly a dream, but I was able to pay for school and make money during the pandemic, so I just consider it a temporary lateral move. Edit: thank you all so much for the awards and karma. I appreciate all of the support. Story 9. It was fine, but no one gives a shoot if you're a professional bassoonist, and there really isn't enough paying work. I did it professionally for 8 years before quitting to raise kids. Now I work in IT. If I had to do it over again, I'd have just gotten a real job and not put so much time into an instrument that I don't like playing. Answer: I played bassoon for most of my teenage years. I was decent enough that I got picked for some quartets and things that my teacher had connections for, but it was so odd to be a teenager playing with middle-aged adults who worked 9 to 5 and had kids my age or older. Yet I was the one with the most limiting schedule because I couldn't just skip school or be out past 9 because my parents were driving me. I loved it, but I knew I wasn't going to make millions or a ton of friends playing bassoon, so I quit before college. Story 10. I made a solid run at becoming a writer. It was always my dream, as I've been an avid reader my whole life and have always had an active imagination. I studied English in university, read everything I could, and spent my 20s living and traveling overseas. I joined writers' groups, did an apprenticeship with an established author, and worked my jerk off for years, both abroad and when I returned home. I even got a few short stories published, and I was miserable. Writing fiction has to be the worst paying job in the world when you factor in the time you put in. Stephen King references this at the start of On Writing. Writers like King are extreme outliers, and even he had to work a 9-to-5 while writing Carrie. It is extremely hard to grind out a job all day, then come home and try to write all evening, or get up at 5 a.m. every day and write before work. Not only is it difficult to conjure up the juice you need to write when you're working around a regular life schedule, but everything else in your life slips. You don't have time to work out. You miss out on spending time with friends and family. You're sitting in your desk or chair every night while your partner is watching TV alone. And if you have kids, good luck. I became overweight, depressed, and miserable. I developed back issues from spending 12 hours a day in a chair. I wasn't getting anywhere in life. And while it was nice to get published the odd time, I didn't find the joy in my own writing the way I do in others, so I let it go. Now I have a great job, nice house, and lots of time to spend with my wife and pursue my hobbies. I fixed my back issues and got in great shape until COVID, and I have grown so much as a person since then, so no regrets. I do think about it from time to time, though. I still read a lot, and I'm sure that itch will come back sometime. It's not like being an athlete. Nothing to say I can pick it back up any other time edit. Wow. Thanks for all the awesome comments. A lot of people asking me how I fixed my back, LOL. So here it is. Mine started with soreness and the tingling down my leg. I had a couple bad episodes, which I now know was the result of a compressed disc. This would eventually devolve into a full-blown herniated discs of my L4, L5. Seriously, it was awful. One of the worst times of my life. The pain was excruciating and debilitating. I couldn't drive and I slept on my living room floor for months. Work was awful, even with a stand-up desk, and I had no quality of life. Whether you're trying to heal a disc or prevent it before getting that bad, this is what I recommend. The key is in decompressing and strengthening. You have to focus everything on those two things. Take pressure off you back by losing weight. I used a ketogenic diet. This also helped mitigate inflammation. Get an inversion table. I got a cheap one off Amazon, and with a Prime membership, the shipping was free. I use mine every day. I did decompression therapy with a PT, though once we went too far on the machine and it actually made it far worse for a few weeks. How to run yoga and other stretching exercises and work on strengthening. At my worst, I took a reduced schedule from work and went to the YMCA every day. I worked with a trainer to do very basic strengthening poses and worked my way up. I also got in the hot tub and sauna every day. I progressed slowly to doing more body weight, yoga, Pilates, and low-intensity strength training, focusing on the back, butt, glutea, and hamstring chain. Seriously, I totally rebuilt this part of my body, going from mushy, soft to hard muscle and buns of steel. I remember vividly my wife giving me a butt tap one day and going, "Oh, that's when it sunk in how effective has been at this. Gave it time to heal. Use all the weapons you can, but go slow. Definitely use CBD and really watch your diet. This is huge to help reduce inflammation. It was a lot of hard work, but I did it and avoided surgery. By the time my turn came, I was healed. Thanks for the delay, Canadian healthcare. In all, this was an 8-month process. As for other medical, I was on painkillers at the beginning. I tried to avoid them, but I was in an insane amount of daily pain and eventually gave in. I was very careful and controlled, though, and gave it up as soon as my pain started to subside. Obviously, you have to be extremely careful with these or force yourself to avoid them altogether if you can. I also never got the cortisol shot. Being in Canada, the wait times are ridiculous, so by the time it was offered, I didn't need it. But the moral of this story is you can totally fix yourself, even something as severe as a herniated disc, with hard and meticulous work. You have to be motivated by the desire to not become a lifelong victim to your back pain, as I was. Answer: being a successful writer means taking on far more than just writing your book or short story. I'm a medical writer for a cancer center and love it, but I always wanted to write other things as well. I spent 2 years writing the memoir of a friend who served as a helicopter crew chief in Vietnam, including time in special ops running covert missions into Laos and Cambodia. I hope to publish it, but finding an agent has beaten me down. Today, you can't be just a good writer. You need to have a strong presence on social media, with a lot of followers on Twitter, Facebook, and a popular blog, because agents and publishers expect you to be the marketing engine. I'm in my 60s now and just don't have that level of energy anymore. It's not the writing that's hard, it's the hustle. Story 11. I was a child actor. I was relatively successful. I was on a popular soap and even had my 15 minutes of fame. I had TV shows and films and commercials on the go. Of course, this meant I was bullied at school. If I answered their incessant questions about what it was like on set, they said I was stuck up for talking about myself. If I didn't answer their questions, they said I was stuck up for not engaging with them. I was talked down to, ignored, laughed at, the usual high school stuff. But for most people, that stuff ends in high school. For famous people, it never ends, as we see on the internet daily. Then I met someone on set who told me what it was really like, that if you're not made for it, the fame part can completely destroy you as a person. If you are private or shy or anxious, as I am, it can tear you apart inside, and it's constant. And for the really famous people, it never ever goes away. She helped me recognize that what I loved was the process, the on-set family, the job itself. The recognition, the total lack of privacy, and the inevitable bullying just wasn't what I wanted my life to be. She showed me that at this early stage of my career, I could make my choice. I didn't have to just stumble into a lifestyle I wouldn't easily be able to get out of. She showed me the truth that for most people, by the time they know they dislike the lifestyle, it's already too late. When I was 18, I quit my agency and never looked back. Now, 19 years later, in my office job in finance, I make a fraction of what I could have made, and I don't enjoy my work nearly as much as I enjoyed TV and film sets, but I'm anonymous, and I am happy. The girl I met these days, she can't even go to a grocery store or a petrol station without being mobbed. We're not still in touch, but I follow her career. Me, I can go anywhere and do anything without anyone giving me a second glance. That makes me happy. I hope she's happy too. Answer. A girl I knew from my hometown area was the tie-dye girl from camp in the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap. She said she got bullied like crazy as a kid and decided acting wasn't for her for the same reasons you did. Now she's happily married and has 3 kids and really loves her life. Neither of you made the wrong choice, and it sucks that kids are so darn mean to each other. Bunch of tiny Hitlers. Story 12. Part of me regretted it. Part of me knew I had to. I always wanted to be a doctor. No pushy parents or anything like that. I just wanted to fix problems, and medical things seemed like the most interesting problems. Things change, get worse better. Add new problems. My little brother was born and developed seizures and development issues. I decided pediatrics was for me. The same problems puzzles, but with the added intrigue of the patient being unable to tell me what was wrong. Sounds a bit sick, but that's what my brain wanted. I didn't get the grades at school. Unfortunately, my stepdad died, and it messed me up a bit being needed at home with my siblings, and I shifted my focus. I did go to university, did an access course, and a biology degree with the aim of then going on to medicine afterwards. Sadly, I got 2 rejections for med school, on my birthday no less, and I pissed away the rest of my final year because what was the point anymore? I then met a boy, now husband, and needed to get a job. Any job. Please just give me a job. Countless applications were ignored or rejected. I felt worse than useless. I finally landed a job at a call center. Dislike every minute of it, but bills got paid, a wedding and honeymoon have been paid for, and we bought our house. But in 2019, I knew I was turning 30 soon and knew this wasn't what I wanted, even if it was what I needed. I enrolled at a local college on an access course, and last year I passed with distinction. I applied to a few university courses, and I had 2 successful interviews. I quit my sucky job on New Year's after nearly 6 years of hating it, and in 2 weeks, I start my course to become a nurse. Plans change, needs must, but I'm hoping it's worked out. Answer. A doctor was the only thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up. I had never considered any other alternative. And then I headed off to college majoring in pre-med, completely unprepared for the pace and rigor, and I bailed on the program. Years passed with crappy, unfulfilling jobs until I decided that I'd go to nursing school until I could get myself back into the path of becoming a doctor. Turns out nursing was what I was meant to do, and I'm incredibly glad that my original plan didn't work out. Hopefully you'll find joy and success in nursing. Story 13. Honestly, turned out great. I realized my band wasn't going to get a record deal after a few years, and then after playing for other people's bands for a while, it started to become less fun. I got a proper job, started working on my career, and used my new spare time to start playing rugby again. Now I've got a really good job in a sector I enjoy working in, married, kids, nice house, all that stuff, and I still play rugby on Saturdays, pre-pandemic, to keep things a little different as well as keeping in shape. I don't really see it as giving up on my dream. It was just recognizing that it wasn't going to happen. I'm very fond of that period of my life, and having spent quite a few years chasing that particular dream, I don't have any regrets or what-ifs about being in a band. Answer: I'm going through this exact thing right now. I went to music school, got a degree, and the degree is meaningless for really any field, including music most of the time. I've recorded for label releases. I've toured nearly the entire continental 48 states. I've played in front of thousands of people and headline venues I never thought I would get close to. But it isn't enough. I work 2-day jobs now with the pandemic, but even before, when I was playing 15 times a month, I still needed 1-2 jobs. I went 3 to 4 months at the height of our run with no other jobs other than music. It was awesome, but not reliable in any way. I'm contemplating getting a job I'll probably dislike to make the money I need to truly get out of debt, buy a house, be happy, and travel when it's safe again. I need health insurance and some form of benefits. I'm going crazy, feeling like I'll regret it forever if I walk away from pursuing music as a career and not just a hobby. But I'm getting close to 30 and deliver pizza and work in a drum shop to make ends barely meet. I can't really save, not really making any kind of dent in student loans, credit card payments. It sucks. Story 14. It went extremely well. Initially trained, wanting to be an actor. Got accepted into a company touring around Europe, but then decided it would set me down a path that would most likely not work out. Chose instead to take the more secure route to study physics, which I also enjoyed. I had great ambitions to become a professor, but that dream quickly died partway through my PhD. Worst years of my life of workplace, bullying, stress, and eventual depression. I have no regrets about leaving after I passed the defense. Went on to leave academia to get a job in data science within the financial insurance sector. It is far from a fulfilling career, but is secure and pays well. It gives me the freedom to live my life comfortably and have recently been able to afford a house as a direct result of my career choice. I am happy now. I sometimes wonder how my life would have turned out had I chosen a different path, but realistically, I don't think things could have turned out much better than they have now. Maybe I'll try a new passion once I'm more financially secure. We will see. Story 15. At age 15, I started playing guitar in a band. The dream was to become a rock star. At age 22, I was playing Gazzari's on the Sunset Strip, a set of original tunes and club where so many famous people started. It was the heyday of the metal scene, and that was happening in Los Angeles. By 1984, I realized that it was not just a question of being a great band or writing great songs. I had seen a lot of great bands in Los Angeles that had great songs go absolutely nowhere. Then really crappy bands, I won't mention names to avoid hurting anyone, that did have commercial success. So why was this? It turns out being a great band that writes great songs is just not enough. You also have to be incredibly lucky. More people win the lottery than become famous rock stars. It was time to get real. I was 22 and I wanted things. So I gave up my dreams and became an electrical apprentice. By the time I was 24, I was running jobs. At 27, I was accepted in the IBU as a journeyman electrician after passing the journeyman block test, accepted in a lot of states. At age 31, I became a master electrician and general foreman in the IBW. I then became the superintendent of a large union shop. And finally, at age 33, I started my own electrical contracting business. At age 41, I became 100 disabled and was forced to retire. That was almost 20 years ago. I still have my Bray amp and my Les Paul in my bedroom, always plugged in so I can pick it up anytime I want. So I'd say everything turned out okay for me. Edit. I want to thank everyone that replied. I can't possibly answer everyone, but I will answer a few of the most common questions. First, I was not hurt on the job. I have fibromyalgia. It started in 1986 and then slowly took over until 2002 when my doctor told me I was not returning to work. The major symptoms of fibromyalgia are chronic pain and chronic fatigue. I thought I was just overworked and needed a break, but it was not to be. Forced retirement was a very difficult thing because I got a lot of my self-esteem from my job. I also made a lot of money. Playing guitar definitely was an important part of adjusting to not working. I don't have any recordings left. Most of them were stolen in a box that contained guitar pedals that was stolen out of my garage in the mid-80s. My brother still has some reel-to-reel to real 4-track recordings, but doesn't have a 4-track player to play them or mix them down. And also, it was so nice to see how many of you had similar experiences to me. Very uplifting to hear from you all. Answer: I realized this as well. I also realized that I only really enjoyed the songwriting and recording portion of being a musician. I dislike performing and marketing. I've decided to just start uploading my original song, Simple Performance videos to Instagram and YouTube. If I get lucky and one of these videos gets a lot of views, that's great. I'll become a YouTuber in my spare time and make a few extra bucks. If not, that's fine too. Story 16. This will probably get lost in the comments, but a family member of mine got laid off years ago, so he decided to actually pursue his dream and go to law school. He finished and was practicing law, but his family was still flat broke, and he was barely getting by. Then the job that laid him off years ago called him up and asked him to come back. And now he's about 6 months away from retirement. I asked him if he regretted it, and he said absolutely not. He loved practicing law, but his job now allows him way more money, lots of benefits he wouldn't have had if he was practicing law, and a hefty retirement package. When he has time off, he and his family can actually enjoy themselves. Is it his ideal career? No, but it was worth it to adjust what he wanted to do when he wasn't working. Story 17. It's not a fancy dream like most here, but I dreamed of opening a childcare center, daycare for low-income families back where I grew up. Went to school for early childhood education, took specialized courses in childcare administration, worked as a teacher for a while in daycare and private kindergarten. In that time, got pregnant with my daughter and was making so little money due to childcare costs, even with the employee discount, that I left for an office job. Never completed my bachelor's, let alone the master's degree that is usually needed to be a daycare director in my state. Slowly climbed the ladder in office roles, making one more than my teacher wages, then 2, then 5, then 100, then 250, then 350, then 400, then more, and climbing. As a friggin' recruiter, a boring, non-creative, emotionally unfulfilling role that helps candidates but exists to serve the company. I do some training on the corporate level, and I get to train in other areas such as my improv comedy team that I'm a part of. So I do have creative outlets, but a part of my heart will always want to be a daycare director. I still doodle my dream center layout. I browse inventory catalogs and look at current staffing costs. I check out every center that I drive by. But knowing that I'd be doing a difficult job for less than 13 of what I make now, as a center director, nope, can't do it. Can't eliminate myself to help someone else. Did that my entire life. Gotta worry about me now. Edit, all of the comments you are leaving are really nice and appreciated. I posted here because I thought it might be an interesting perspective to show that somebody can be happy outside of their career despite it not being their dream job. I absolutely love the company that I work for, and I think it would take a miracle or firing me to get me to leave that company. It's the first place I've ever worked where they truly entirely love their employees and treat them very, very well. While I do miss the optimism of working in the childcare industry, I don't miss the living hand to mouth. Currently, the highest paying daycare director job within 50 miles of my home pays $25,000 less than I make now. That's a massive pay cut. I would need at least 4, probably 6 years of college at a minimum in order to move forward, not to mention capital. I can't imagine going back to school and spending what would be more than 3 years of my salary as a daycare director to get a degree in a field that pays significantly less than I'm currently making without a degree. I can't put my family's financial stability at risk like that. That would set us back literally a decade at a minimum. So while it sucks to let go of this dream, doing a job that heartily pays my bills allows me to invest in my hobbies. I'm part of an improv comedy team that has been wildly successful in our area. I'm on 2 awesome podcasts, and outside of a pandemic, I get to teach improv to adults and children. I'm still a teacher. I'm still a facilitator and a director. I'm very happy. And unlike when I worked in childcare, I can actually afford to go on vacations and take days off of work. So I say, if you need to, ditch one dream to find a job that funds your other dreams. That's where I'm at, and I'm happy. Story 18. Worked out well for me. I was a professional poker player in my early 20s. Not the cool guys you see on TV. Picture a guy in a dark room, dispassionately clicking between 4 screens of low limit, looking like he hasn't showered in 3 days because he hadn't showered in 3 days. That description sounds sad, but it was actually great. Made my own hours, was making a very solid, dependable income. Plus, since it made my living situation, income, and time very flexible, I moved across the country and lived with a friend and 7 other people who were far more social than me and ended up being very social and outgoing for the first time in my life. It was basically arbitrage, and when the poker boom started to fade, I used similar strategies to supplement my income with sports betting. I quit for 3 reasons. 1, I didn't see a future. I am not a risk taker, and it was obvious to me I would have to move up in risk acceptance to continue making a living. as the online poker boom faded out. 2, it was pretty apparent to me that my job could be done better by a bot or someone with advanced programming algorithms. So that's just a matter of time. And 3, I met a girl. And the girl, now my wife of 12 years, had no problem with poker. But for the first time in my life, I saw myself as wanting the suburban kids and picket fence life. Poker wasn't really fun anymore, and playing against tipsy Brits at 4 a.m. my time wasn't going to work for me for the next 30 years. I had a business degree, so I just went out and started a boring 9-to-5 call center job in a sector that I figured would always mean I had steady work and a middle-class income. My after-tax take-home pay was less than half of what it had been from poker sports betting. Decision-wise, so far so good. 10 years later, I'm solidly in the kind of 9-to-5 pointless middle management job that many people would absolutely dislike, but I am very happy with. Because my new dream is my family and kids. And my job means that we always have a roof and groceries, and I am there for every recital or soccer game or first new food or chapter book, etc. Sounds like a pointless dream to some, but it's not one that was forced on me. It's one I chose. And I'm thankful that I did pursue poker and was able to leave it when I was ready. Edited for grammar, clarity. Story 19. Came from a very traditional patriarch Indian family. Pushed into finance, made lots of money, was utterly depressed, found love, got married quickly, had 3 kids quickly, became a stay-at-home dad as wife kicked jerk in her field of work. Best career trade off of made in my life. As I whip up the meanest batch of strawberry banana pancakes this AM. Story 20. Chased my dream, took decades, and did better than I thought I could. Stayed focused throughout. Thing is, I should have reevaluated long ago. Turns out I was chasing the wrong dream. I regret not recognizing that the dream can and should change. If you blindly chase one dream, the finish line isn't necessarily fulfilling. Story 21. I loved drawing and cartooning all through high school. Wanted to go to college for it. On the advice of a counselor, I got in touch with someone in graphic design, actually got to talk on the phone. After a few questions about my classes, no art classes, and my portfolio, didn't have one, they paused and went, "Well, you haven't really done any of the things you'd need to do if you want to pursue this." Oops. First thing out of high school, I got on the path to do X-ray and wound up meeting my wife on the job. I'm working in CT right now while she's home with our baby. I still draw for fun, wouldn't change a thing. Story 22. 18 months ago, I left my mediocre career as a stuntman for more secure work as a DoD contractor. I'm now living life in Japan with a loaded bank account, and my wife can focus on her writing. Although I miss performing stunts, I now enjoy my day-to-day life without worrying about finances or health insurance. Edit. I regret nothing. I can say I doubled Gerard Butler and Michiel Madsen, but it was time to move on to provide for my new family. Story 23. TLDR. I went from being a pro musician, signed to a label, to working IT security. I make great money, but I'm kind of miserable. I go back and forth, mostly regret. COVID has given me a strange new perspective on what is and isn't worth pursuing in life. I was a former professional musician in my late teens to mid-20s. Got the degree, started a band, worked our jerk off, and got signed to a label that later became notorious for ripping bands off. Name rhymes with prick story bread chords. I toured the country, played in front of thousands of people, recorded a couple of kick jerk albums, and played gigs several days a week for nearly a decade of my life. Problem was, that entire time, I didn't make a fudge nickel. I was broke all the time. I didn't officially move out of my parents' house completely until I was 24. I had apartments and roommate situations, sure, but for many years I had to have my safety net of my mom and stepdad, which is embarrassing. I remember the day I decided to quit the band I was in. We drove 12 hours to Atlanta for a music festival, only to be told on arrival that we were bumped from the bill. Not only that, but the promoter, aka Dickhole, decided to compensate us with a measly 100 for our inconvenience. 100 split among 5 dudes. It wasn't worth the hard work anymore, living in a van and eating gas station food and military rations to survive. I quit the band not long after. Long story short, I transitioned into IT. I make 6 figures, own a house, have a wife, and a top-of-the-line Nissan Armada Platinum in my driveway, and frankly, I couldn't be more miserable if I tried. I constantly get shoveled in my face. Ching Par, fix this. Ching Par, what's the status on this situation? Ching Par, sorry you're on your honeymoon, but dog shit software just went down and we need your help. Ching Par, you aren't professional enough. You need to work on your communication. Ching par, good job getting all of your work done without ever needing help. You're super good at your job, but it isn't quite enough for us. You need to be perfect. Ching par, you did 99 of your job perfectly, but didn't send an email fast enough. You're useless. Sorry, I got lost in the rant, but my point stands. I'm half tempted to move to Vegas and work as a hired gun in a casino band. Those assholes make money hand over fist playing covers from the 80s. Story 24. It's strange. I thought I had given up pursuing my dream. I achieved the dream much later in life. I work for Solace Animation in Toronto. I create 3D environments in Unreal Engine and use those environments for creating backgrounds for 2D animation. I got that gig at age 31. I'm 36 now and have been very happy with this work because I spent my 20s doing really rough jobs. I was once a general labor worker who had to clean the very few toilets over 300 people had used. It's a nightmare. Removing mounds of rubble, broken glass, and risking asbestos inhalation. It was actually great money. I thought that was what I'd be doing until my back broke, but I went back at the dream and actually got the job. What really happened was, at age 30, I quit drinking. That made the difference. Years of adult beverage abuse put me in horrible job positions I most definitely deserved. Answer: I would love to see some of your work and the works it's been utilized in. I'm about to be laid off from my IT gig and have been learning Blender. I first experienced 3D modeling in high school about 17 years ago and loved it. But life took me down the IT route versus digital art. So I've fallen back in love with it after a few tutorials, and your work sounds like my dream job. I know the market is brutal and I'm likely forever going to be outclassed by better artists, but it's that what if that I want to so desperately scratch the itch of. Story 25. About 18 months ago, I left my tertiary education in a creative field to take a job opportunity, which I applied for, but never thought I would get. It was a paid traineeship with a guaranteed transition into six-figure salary, which I will reach in March. My annual salary is about to be more than twice as much as I ever thought it would be for the rest of my life. But every day I go to work, I fantasize about leaving and returning to my creative career. I'm still reckoning with how to balance my life and hopefully have the best of both worlds, but my attempts so far have been really challenging. Whether or not I'm capable of doing both is yet to be determined since my secure job absorbs so much of my energy. Wish me luck. Edited for grammar. Answer: Hey, just dropped in to say that the kind of money you will earn could set you up after just a few years to allow you to comfortably transition back into something you love more, if you don't end up actually loving this new job. My friend worked in an extremely high-paid job for 3 years, didn't go overboard spending, and saved a large majority. He now runs his own small company in a field he wanted to impact since we were young. I think this will be really good for you in the long run. Story 26. It turned out just the way it was meant to. After spending a few years pursuing my dream, the time it took away from my kid and the lifestyle dynamic it put me in was not worth the career choice. I initially thought I was setting an example for my son that you can do anything you set your mind to and that you should follow your dreams. But ironically, my dreams changed while I was doing it. Working 60 hours a week plus my commute, I didn't have enough time to be a mom. So I quit chasing after it, started a closer to home, regular job, and met my husband a few months after. Now I'm a stay-at-home parent, and when my degree is finished and my youngest is in school, it'll have the same schedule as my kids when I go back to work. So IDK if I gave up on my dream, so much as it changed. I grew out of it, in a way. I'm glad I went for it, though, because now I don't have any what-ifs, and I'm not romanticizing it as something it isn't. Story 27. 5 years ago, I turned down a doubling of my salary and life in the sun at a huge company working the perfect job for a girl. I hadn't known her too long. I was silly, but I just knew something. Something told me not to go. Now I live with her, and I'm going to marry her and have kids. Sometimes I regret it or think what could have been, but I'm actually happy now. Story 28. I spent years chasing my dream, and when I achieved it, I had a huge what now moment. I realized that spending your life chasing is draining. Story 29. Wanted to be a surgeon growing up as a kid for the money and the power of saying, hey, look at me. I'm a doctor. Settled to being a nurse, and honestly, between having 4 days off each week and super job security, especially this year from Corona, do no regret it one bit. Also, hospital I work at had a poke stop, so that's nice, I guess. Story 30. It turned out just fine. I regret nothing. When I was an arrogant young man, convinced that I was smarter than everyone else and that intelligence alone would translate to professional success, I dreamt of becoming a CEO and making oodles of money. After a few years in corporate America, though, I realized that 1. Being successful actually requires a lot more than just raw intelligence. And 2. Making lots of money in corporate America requires lots of personal and ethical sacrifices. I quit my job, traveled the world, and ended up moving permanently to a foreign country. 5 stars, highly recommended. Story 31. My dream was to become an architect and start my own company, building unique, beautiful homes for millionaires. I got a girl pregnant just before I was due to go to uni, so I dropped out and became a carpenter. Now I own a company building beautiful houses for millionaires without $200K of student debt. Story 32. Truth is, your mind desires what it doesn't have. If you chase your dream, you will desire for stability and comfort. If you have comfort and stability, you will desire you had chased your dream. So I say never regret. Just keep trying new experiences and never stop. Cause if one life isn't enough to satisfy you, nothing is. Answer: I should have hurried youth in truth and moved more quickly on. I should have made the most of youth before the time was gone. I should have followed fancy free before it thought to fade. I should have picked a good degree or found myself a trade. I should have stopped to stare above, to share another's dreams. I should have never welcomed love and lost it all, it seems. No matter what the aim or end, no matter what you do, regrets are part of life, my friend. Don't let them conquer you. NBSP source from A Poem for Yours, Prague. Story 33. I was a piano performance major in college and I really wanted to be a musician. But I was broke, so I got my first job as a help desk technician. After a year, I thought it would be more stable to go into computer science and music classes, or eliminate my dream anyways. So I thought it would be a great switch. Honestly, I think it was the best decision of my life. I realized passions change. I found art in writing code and I get paid well. If I had been a musician during this pandemic, I would have been royally screwed. Dream chasing is for people who have rich parents. Normal people make dreams out of what they have. Story 34. I wanted to become a professional diver. I do have the dive guide certification, but I realized that working in your passion field is very different than your passion. The saying, if you work in something you are passionate about, you don't work a day in your life, does not apply to my case. I did not like the customer interaction. I love teaching scuba diving, but not the dealing with Karen part. I went back to uni. I am now a chemist engineer and am much happier. Less physically demanding. The only human I have to deal is my project manager that handled the Karens, and I bought a house this year that I would not be able to do if I stayed in the scuba diving career. That being said, I still volunteer when there's not a pandemic going on. And scuba dive in the weekends, I am so relived I can enjoy my passion again. Edit. Typo. Story 35. A blessing in disguise, I successfully passed all these aptitude tests and was preparing to travel to the interview in a few weeks' time to the south of England. I always wanted to be a pilot since I seen an Avro Vulcan in Gibraltar in the late 80s. All I had to do was choose an available date, but I had a gut feeling to hold off, and a few days later, the company went bust. The company was Flybe. Since sticking with my software engineering career, I've had more time with the family and have saved the company a few $1,000s, which has secured my position for the foreseeable future. And since the pandemic started in part of the workforce, that has not been furloughed and the company has been doing quite well and has plans to expand this year. Story 36. Hardly regret. I was transitioning from an IT career to film, a dream I'd been planning for a long time. Wrote and directed a few shorts and a TV series. After doing music videos and TVCs, could almost see the path clearing to making my first proper film, but fell in love and walked away to have a family. I guess the ease with which I walked away just meant I was never going to make it, but I wonder from time to time. I couldn't navigate the networking side well at the time. Juggling work was tricky to get in front of the right people at the right parties. I love my life and family now. I'm still working IT in the corporate world, and it gets me down regularly, but it also motivates me to stick with the creative stuff just to maintain my sanity. I finished my first novel manuscript last year, so that was a plus in an otherwise disgusting 2020. Story 37. I never really bailed on a dream. I just redefined what it was several times. I did finally settle on what I wanted, and I achieved it also. It was a long and arduous process, and I have debt that I wish I didn't have, but I did what I did for myself, and that I don't regret. Story 38. Chasing a dream can often be like trying to reach the horizon. The concept of reaching it is an illusion. Aim instead to enjoy your journey, regardless of any destination you might find. Story 39. Having a secure and comfortable life eventually was my dream. I had aspirations when I was young to go into music or writing, and I really did try for a career in those areas for a little while. But these are fields where deeply talented people, much more talented than me, work themselves to the bone for years with no guarantee of being able to support themselves steadily. Some people seem to be preternaturally able to do this through some combination of grit and work and luck and positive outlook, but am not one of them. I realized in my mid-20s that I wasn't going to ever be happy living with so much uncertainty. And am fortunate to have, eventually, found a desk job that seems boring on paper, but lets me solve interesting problems and work with cool, smart people. The work is steady and pays more than I ever dreamed of making when I was young. And the thing is, I'm in my 40s and I still write and make music whenever I want. My life gives me space for it now. During the pandemic, I've learned how to play a new instrument, just for the hell of it. And when I make music or write now, it feels good, just the way it felt when I was young. My financial security isn't tied up in it. I can just love it for what it is because it's beautiful and makes my brain feel good. Story 40. I always wanted to be an academic in computer science, so I applied to universities in the US because it's the cutting edge of my field. The first time I applied, I got rejected roundly. I worked real hard on my profile and applied again. I got accepted into an MS course and got rejected for all my PhD applications. I decided I'd do the MS and then look to continue a PhD. I had done a few internships and decided I wanted to be a researcher in the industry. It seemed like the best of both worlds. Things kind of went according to plan, but my close friend in the program eliminated himself, and that started this spiral of depression. By the time I was done with my MS, I was burned out. I decided to work in the industry for a few years and then apply for a PhD at a better program. 3 years later, I applied to PhD programs, and the best lab called me to just come hang out with them during some event they were having. When I went there, I got the same PTSD that I had with my MS. And I liked it even less because I was used to the industry where I was treated like a competent person. And here the other grad students talked down to me, even though I was at that moment working on a very impactful product. I went home loving the professors in the lab and hating the colleagues and really confused. Then my parents called and told me my father was diagnosed with cancer. I couldn't afford the pay cut to be a grad student anymore. My family needed my income. I was dejected. Then I got fired from my industry job and had to find another one stat. When I began applying for jobs, I applied with the intent of getting a job I could be in for years, because who knew how long my father would need chemo? Then I realized what I really was attracted to was autonomy to work on a problem. There were lots of people working on exciting problems, but they weren't usually academics. They were entrepreneurs. Lots of them were fresh out of undergrad. And by then, my dream of being an industry researcher had become impossible too. Lots of my dream employers had fired their researchers or integrated them into innovation teams where they couldn't just be working on cool stuff that would take years to become a reality. They had to work on short time horizons. A PhD wasn't really going to give me what I wanted. I found a job with a nice startup which worked on exciting problems and which paid very well. I have completely ditched the idea of being an academic. Now I just want to save up enough money to take care of my family without having to hold down a stressful job. Story 41. Financially well, and I would assume to most it's a pretty idyllic life. Nonetheless, I'm somewhat disappointed and often wonder what might have been. Story 42. For me, it was about finding other ways to still infuse my passion into everyday life. I always dreamt of being on Broadway and spent my childhood up until college taking lessons and performing. I luckily decided to go to a regular college with a great theater program instead of the full-on conservatories it considered. After a semester, I changed my major and never looked back. I saw people I considered to be way more talented than I struggling to make it, and I didn't want that life. Now, I have a lifestyle where I can support the arts by seeing shows. I sing in a women's group, and I have a bucket list goal of being in one more community theater show. Keeping the interest alive in other ways helps turn regret into more of a fond memory of another time. Edit. Spelling. Story 43. Wanted to become a psychologist, but didn't have the grades to apply for grad programs or a PhD program. I also thought I couldn't make enough money in that field to suffice. Pursued a professional career instead. I make good money, but I find it so boring and not challenging. 8 years in, and I decided to go back to school. I am the type who likes to help people, and my current job, I only help my company. I am currently taking classes to boost my GPA and will apply to grad school this year. Here's to hoping I get in. Story 44. From the get-go after graduating university, I left behind any dream of traveling and living abroad and started a stable career. I was really good at it too. But a little over a year later, I quit said stable career. 7 months into my job, I started to be lifeless. I was living, but every day I would be driving to work in my brand new car thinking, if I drove this fast enough into the shoulder, can I have an instant passing? I started overeating, overspending, and my body also just decided, hey, you should die. And I developed a whole bunch of problems, and I was in and out of the hospital a lot. So I quit, started traveling, and now live abroad. Have been for over 2 years now. I'm happier. I have time to find stability later. F27. Story 45. I had to give up my dream of being a veterinarian because I couldn't afford the college tuition. So I went home and became a farmer like my grandfathers and father. It went well until I got married and my ex-wife decided after 7 years of marriage that she didn't want to be a farmer's wife. And she filed for divorce. That cost me about $500,000 and my farm back in the mid-1980s. So it was a chunk of change. So I went back to school to learn to be a machinist toolmaker and later a medic. I met a beautiful woman and married her. We had and raised 4 wonderful and highly successful daughters together, and we now enjoy 4 grandsons. This New Year's Eve, we celebrated 35 years together. Growing old with someone is the best thing in the world. And now I sit here in our home, drinking my Sunday morning tea, and look out the window across the snow and through the trees over a now frozen lake. I realize this was the dream I was looking for all my life. Story 46. Back when I was younger, I used to be a darn good tennis player, played for the county and used to do pretty well at nationals. Got offered a place at an academy in Spain twice and a few other performance school academies along the way. Would have been a dream to go and play Wimbledon or something one day. Unfortunately, I'm too sensible to go and pursue that properly as the chances of getting super successful are immensely low, even if you dedicate your life to it. So kept playing tennis competitively, but it took a backseat to my studies. I'm now a year out from finishing medical school and haven't looked back. Still play in the UK Premier Division for my uni though, so tennis is still a big part of my life. Story 47. Not exactly what you're asking, but pretty similar. I wanted to be an airline pilot since I was around 4 years old, ever since I got a chance to go visit the flight deck during a flight. This was pre-911. The first thing that went wrong is that I was going through a tough time when I was going my GCSEs, so didn't do great in them. For anyone unaware, GCSEs are the main final exams you do in school. In most subjects, these exams are what give you your final grade. It's not like the GPA system where you're constantly graded, only these final exams matter. But this wasn't a huge issue. I can resit the exams when I'm ready and get better grades. Fast forward a few years and due to various different things going on in my life, I still haven't retaken my exams. For a little while, I did give up on the dream because I couldn't see any possible way of being able to afford to train to be a pilot. It costs around $80,000, $120,000. So I started taking minimum wage jobs to start paying my way. Another couple of years later, I heard of a guy from my local pub who's an electrician, and he was looking for an apprentice. It's something that interested me, so I took my shot and got the job. I quickly learned that the average pay for an electrician on construction sites was around $1,000 a week, $52,000 a year. A few years of training, then a few years of working. I could be in the flight deck by the time I'm 25. The dream chasing was back on. A couple of years into my training, I come across a cable I'd never used before. It was a DALI cable, which is used for lighting control. A normal power cable in the UK will use the colors brown, blue, and green yellow stripes for the conductors. DALI cables have 2 more conductors, one red and one black. I couldn't tell the difference between the brown and the red cable. Here I was at 23 years old, hearing what no aspiring pilot wants to hear for the very first time in my life, that I could be colorblind. I thought it couldn't be true, as I can see colors, and surely it would have been picked up on earlier. I took practically every colorblind test I could find online, and it was unanimous. Red-green colorblind. To top it off, this meant I couldn't complete my apprenticeship as an electrician. So here we are today. I'm now 3 weeks away from being 27. I work for the UK's most wonderful creation, the NHS. The money is by no means great, but it's enough to get by, and I absolutely love my job. I could see myself staying here for the rest of my working life. But there's not a day goes by that I don't think what if. It's often the source of my poor mental health episodes. It's almost as if my purpose has been ripped away from me, and I don't know why I'm actually here now. In essence, I can't fathom how one could walk away from their dream because losing mine crushed me. It wasn't my choice to give up on my dream, but I fudged dislike it. I would give anything to be up there. Story 48. 24 and working at a grocery store. Went to community college to get an associate's in accounting, but couldn't pass algebra. Thinking about saving some money and going back? Kinda scary though. Thankfully, my job is relatively secure and pays pretty all right for what it is. And there are raises. So far so good. Answer, of course it's scary. Most things that take you out of your comfort zone are. You are only 24. I know you might feel like life is passing you by a little bit. Friends from high school have finished college and are establishing themselves in careers that sound wonderful. But if you've read the thread this far, you know that things change, and sometimes in an instant. The path you are on is maybe the path you should be on. Maybe not. But whatever you do, don't be afraid to try again. My daughter, same age as you BTW, which is why I'm tuned into your sentiments, worked a couple of jobs after HS and became a phlebotomist. Decided to go to community college and was majoring in biology and failed chemistry. Had to take it again. Still dislike it, but passed. But now she realizes that maybe this is not the path she wants to take. Changed her major again to liberal arts and is going to take a swing on her lifelong dream of being an actor-musician. She knows the odds, but also knows she'd have a lifetime of regret if she didn't try. There's way too much pressure on young people to decide at 18 what they want to do with their lives, and to go $150K into debt figuring it out. Hell, I'm going to be 55 and still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Story 49. Work like a dog to get everything stable. Get a house, get the car I wanted. Happy pets. Good life. Then my husband lost his mind to CTE, turned to adult beverage, and tore it all down for us while I was thousands of miles away, driving a semi to keep us afloat. That was my shot. Credits fudge and so is my health now. So I guess I'll just live out the rest of this life the best I can. Story 50. I was studying to be a teacher. I finally realized after several years of aimless drifting after high school, what I really wanted to do was teach. I moved in with my girlfriend after her parents kicked her out and we weren't doing well financially. I had a shoot part-time job and she was underpaid in her full-time role. We could barely pay the bills, let alone do anything fun. After several months being unable to enjoy even simple luxuries, with her having an emotional breakdown and me unable to focus on my studies, resulting in me likely having to repeat some classes, I made the decision that I had to start bringing money in. I hit the job market and took the first full-time office job that would have me, working as a filing clerk at a finance company, making half what I would have as a teacher, but without having to wait 2 years until graduating. The emotional benefit of being able to just enjoy ourselves without having to struggle from paycheck to paycheck was well worth giving up the dream. That was about 15 years ago now, and I've worked my way up to middle management at an insurance company. My skills are marketable, and the industry is generally stable. My now wife and I are both doing well for ourselves. Looking back, I honestly don't know if I would have been a good teacher, and I have no regrets about my decision to throw it in. Story 51. This will definitely get buried. I gave up most of my dreams because I realized all my major goals weren't actually mine to begin with. Go to a university and even junior college. That's something schools really push towards. I didn't want to go for myself. Getting a degree in psychology or anthropology, more of pipe dream that made my family happy for me. I realized somewhere along the way that no one needs any greater ambition than marrying the woman of your dreams, which I'll propose very soon, hanging out with friends and family, and raising a good family. It won't be grand. I won't make heaps of money and have an impressive education and wild college stories, but I'll have my loved ones with me. Well, live a comfortable life. In the words of a South African exchange student I met while working at a country club, a man only needs 2 things in life: a good drink and a good woman by his side. Story 52. It turned out great. At some point, the advice of "you only live once" starts having another meaning. You only live once. So if you want to spend a good part of your life chasing fame, success, glory, and whatnot, then you better be sure that it is what you want to do. You will give up a lot of peace and tranquility, relationships, and time in exchange for something that might not happen. Or maybe it will, but at the end of the day, you are no better than anyone else. You will just be a guy who happens to have a successful business, or a guy who happens to be really good at something. In the end, your friends or family will remember you as the person they saw under the mask. A person who is truly successful at everything he does is very, very rare. Most likely your chase will end up costing you a marriage, a good relationship with your kids, your health, etc. You have to choose. Story 53. I dropped my dream of pursuing a career in horticulture to study chemistry after getting nowhere in life. I do enjoy chemistry, but nowhere near the amount I enjoy botany. Story 54. A lot of people responding here have dreams tied to their career. I've always thought that is a mistake. Maybe it is because my parents were blue collar and worked in non-sexy jobs, but provided financial security. I've always dreamed of non-work things like spending more time with family and friends, putting more effort into hobbies, etc. My career has always been a way to obtain the financial security necessary to achieve these other dreams. That is not to say that work isn't important. I just think that most people should have. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.